Welcome. In this video, we will be discussing how to play Baroque music on the piano. Now, the piano wasn't in existence in the period we call the Baroque period. It was still undergoing development. It would be developed during the classical period onto the Romantic period. But there nevertheless is a lot of music, a lot of fine music in the Baroque period that often young instrumentalists and even up to college students wish to perform. And the piano still remains the primary instrument that we use for accompaniment. So I want to discuss ways in which you can have a more authentic, more historically accurate way of performing music on the piano, even though it's from the Baroque period, which normally would use the harpsichord and perhaps some other instruments. One of the common hurdles that a pianist encounters when they look at the music is they're often given parts that are already realized, meaning that the right hand notes, the harmonizations have been fully worked out. And if you want to understand what realization is and how that works, I prepared another little video that might be helpful on that, that's talking about continuo music and certainly finding the best, or should I say the best performance editions for music written in the Baroque period. But typically in piano music, and I know trained as a pianist, I was always taught that you have to bring out the melody. Now, the melody often in piano music is of course found in the right hand. So if I were to approach this particular Baroque work, and this is the Galliard First Sonata, the first movement, and play it as I might a piano sonata, or I might think that the melody's in the right hand, I would play it like this. You see, in this instance, I'm bringing out the right hand, thinking that's the melody of the piece. Well, actually it's not. What we need to understand is that music from the Baroque period, particularly the sonatas, that music written for perhaps a solo instrument and continuo, this form of music is really a two-part composition. And we have to consider it differently than we would, for instance, music written by Beethoven for the piano. This is not the same as piano music. And because it's two-part, as we'll see here in a moment, really it's between the left hand in the piano and the solo instrument that you have your interplay, you have your accompaniment. The right hand often is filler.
Well, a good way to illustrate how the composer, in this case Galliard, thought of the sonata as a two-part composition is to take a close look at the original printing, or in this case it's an offset, it's a reproduction of the original printing of the Galliard sonata, the first movement. On the top we see the bassoon part. This is in tenor clef. And you see this one line coming down here. On the bottom part, this is the continuo part, in this case written for harpsichord. Notice the bassoon line has this dotted figure coming down that is then imitated by the bass line in the continuo part, the harpsichord part. Notice the similarity here. This gives you a very clear idea of how this composer is thinking of these two voices being independent yet complementary of each other. Now above the bass line you see here's a sharp, here's some numbers, These are called figured bass, and the musician at that time would have been trained to perform from this part. In a way, it's a little bit like a jazz chart, in that jazz artists, they are not given all the notes they perform. It's expected that they would improvise, that they would add notes at a performance. In the same way, a continuo player was expected to add notes to the performance. So this would be the left-hand part, and then the right hand would fill in notes. Often this left-hand part was also doubled with another instrument, such as cello. So in this edition here by the International Music Company, you can see how now the right-hand part is filled in. There are notes supplied here. These notes are not original to Galliard, the composer. Rather, the realization was made by Karl-Heinz Füssel. And if we compare the two, I think you can see a little bit, perhaps more clearly, how this works. In the box at the bottom here is the original edition, the original printing, and on top is the international edition I refer to. Notice the bassoon part here. They've changed the clef, but we have at the bottom a single note here, and here the editor, the realization is added an entire chord above that, assuming the A minor chord here. And then you can see the added parts above in the keyboard part.
The harpsichord is quite different than the piano in that it does not have really a dynamic range. It's got what's called a plectrum, which is a little quill, and I'll show you in a moment, that plucks the string from the bottom. And if I slowly depress the key, there's just a point at which it'll pluck it. If I depress the key fast, again, it's going to always be the same volume. So it's got a limited dynamic range. So when you're playing on piano, you need to take that into account. There's another interesting feature of the harpsichord, and that's that the lower strings are considerably louder than the higher strings. This is also the case on the piano, but a little less so than the harpsichord. For instance, there's some degree of resonance there, but the upper register, it's a much smaller sound. So in addition to having a cello, for instance, double the lower part in the piano, you also have the fact that the harpsichord is going to be louder in the low register and quieter in the upper register. There are three things I just want to highlight at the end of this video for you, just to summarize what we've learned. First off, you've learned that the left-hand part in the keyboard realization, in the part you have from Baroque music to play on the piano, is the most important part. You need to bring this part out. You have to realize that the right-hand part is a little more optional. If there are notes there you need to leave out, you're welcome to do so. If you understand the harmonies, if you have a good addition, you can see that. You can even change that. That's at your option. Remember that the harpsichord does not have a sustaining pedal. You're trying to imitate, again, the harpsichord sound. So if you use pedal at all, I tend not to, but if you use it at all, use it very sparingly. And last of all, remember that the harpsichord has little in the way of dynamic range. Now, your left-hand part can change dynamics because you would have had a cello or a bassoon playing along. So it's important to support as an accompanist, support the solo instrument with some dynamics in certainly the left hand. But the right hand, generally, you've got to keep lighter and keep your dynamics limited for this style period. Hope that helps you in your accompaniment of Baroque music.